Mark chapter 4 and starting at verse 35. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side," leaving the crowd behind. They took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and waves obey him." When we go through tough times, and we all go through tough times, when we do, who do we turn to? Sometimes who we choose to turn to in a particular problem depends on what we're really wanting somebody to do. Do we just want somebody who will listen to us and show they care? Somebody with that great empathy about them? Or are we looking for somebody really practical who can possibly solve the problem, deal with the problem for us? There are often within our families, within our group of friends, there are different people who can do sort of different ones of these, and depending on where we are, depends on who we turn to. There's those people who will listen. They're just filled with empathy, and they will listen and they show you that they care, and that's really what we need in that difficult time. Then there's that person who you only speak to them if you really do want practical help, because before you're even halfway through saying what the problem is, they're running out the door to grab a screwdriver or move the thing, whatever it is, and you know they're going to deal with the problem for you. But what if we could find the one who can empathise with every situation, whatever we're going through, but also who could resolve any situation, no matter what it is? What if that same person is somebody who we know we could absolutely 100% trust? Says one of the other things as we think about who do we share a problem with, we kind of need to trust them as well. And will they be discreet? Or is the whole estate going to know about my problem by tomorrow morning? What if this one person, we can fully trust them, and we know that they will be with us, that they'll stay with us, stick by us through the situation, no matter how tough it gets. They just won't leave us. And in this passage we see Jesus fulfilling all of those roles. We don't need to look for different people to fulfill different parts of this. Jesus is the one we can turn to who can fulfill all of those roles in one person. And one of the things that Mandy and I have learned over the years of being pastor's wife, helping people within the church, is that we can help. There are times we can help, we can do things, but we don't want people to be turning to us, to be relying on us. We want people to be turning to God, turning to Jesus in their lives. Ultimately, we don't want to become the person who is always there to help them. We want them to realise that Jesus is the one who is always there to help them. When we have a difficult situation, a difficult problem, a huge decision to make, like Margaret has at the moment, our first port of call, the first place we should go is God. Let's turn to Jesus. He will fulfill all of these roles, and we see that in this passage. But the first thing that we learn is that we will go through difficult times. Life's storms will still hit us, even if we're being obedient to his teaching and his leading. Think about the disciples in this passage. The focus very much is on Jesus, but just think about the disciples for a moment. They'd given up everything to follow Jesus. They'd left home and family. They'd walked away from their incomes. They'd walked away from respectability. They'd walked away from everything they knew in order to follow Jesus. One of the teachers of the law came to Jesus and said that he was ready to follow Jesus. Jesus said to him, "The foxes have holes, the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." Jesus was saying, if you come and follow me like these disciples have done, you're not guaranteed a roof over your head tonight. Only follow me if you're willing to give up everything. And the disciples had. When Peter said that he and the other disciples had given up homes and family to follow Jesus, Jesus didn't deny that it was true. He said, yes, you have. Yes, you have given up homes and family to follow me. He simply promised them greater reward in the next life. He didn't say that things would be easy in this life for them. But having given up everything, having turned their backs on everything they knew to follow Jesus, they got into the boat at Jesus' request. Jesus says, we're going to get into the boat, we're going to go to the other side. They followed him, they got in the boat. They must have felt, surely Jesus is going to make sure we'll be okay. We've given up everything to follow him, we trust him. Surely it's going to be okay to get into that boat and sail to the other side. Surely he will make sure that the wind stays calm and the sea doesn't get too rough for us. And I wonder if sometimes that's how we feel about Jesus. We've made the decision to follow Jesus, no turning back, as we sang last week. We've taken our stand against everything that the world holds dear. We've made financial contribution to the kingdom. We've made financial contribution to the point where it is hurting. We've had friends and family reject us. We've been ridiculed at work. Surely, if we've done all of that for the sake of the kingdom, if we've done all of that for the sake of following Jesus, we can expect some kind of payback in this life. Surely life is going to get easier and calmer and smoother, and we're not going to go through all the difficulties that everybody else is. Surely from now on, life is going to be like sailing across a placid lake with no waves. The car isn't going to break down. I'm never going to have unexpected bills. The roof isn't going to leak. I'm never going to miss the last bus. I definitely won't get COVID. That's how the disciples were thinking. And it's the trap that I think we all fall into at times. But the disciples very soon discovered they were mistaken. That their thinking was skewed. I've read this passage many, many times. I've taught it so many times with children, acting out all these different bits. I've never noticed before that Jesus told them to get into the boat and cross the lake. Did you spot that in verse 35? The disciples were only there. They were only in the middle of Lake Galilee when the storm blew up because Jesus had told them that's where to be. They sailed right into the path of this great storm because they were following what Jesus had said. Not because they were running away from God. They weren't like Jonah. Not because they disobeyed Jesus. No, Jesus had led them to this very spot, right on the lake at that time, knowing that the storm was going to blow. They were in the right place when they went through this storm. As Christians, we are going to face tough times. We will travel through life's storms. We will still have unexpected bills. Things will break down. We do miss transport links. We do get lost. But if we're men, we'll never ask directions. We will get lost. We will still get ill. We will still face bereavement. There are some in this church going through life storms right now. There are some who seem to have faced so many of life's storms that we wonder why. Seem to have faced more difficulties and hurts and problems than seems fair for them. And as we're going through those storms, as we face those difficult times, do we sometimes cry out like the disciples did in verse 38? Don't you care if I drown? God, don't you care what I'm going through right now? Don't you care that I'm already facing all of these problems? Why have you given me this one as well? Don't you care? The NIV says, don't you care if we drown? The Greek word used there doesn't really mean drown, it means be fully destroyed. Don't you care if I'm fully destroyed by this event? The boats that they were in would have looked something like this. It was about 8 metres long, just over 2 metres wide. That's 26 feet long by 7.5 feet wide for those of you who remember old money. Look how many ropes there are on there. You know, it took skilled people to sail these boats. Notice this flat part at the back. Remember that for later on. That becomes important. Galilee, the lake that they were on, is 700 feet below sea level. 200 metres below sea level. The air pressure there is much higher than almost anywhere else in the world because it's such a low-lying spot. And the high pressure causes huge downdrafts of air, which turn into violent winds and churn up the water. One artist pictures that boat on the gale, something like this. No wonder they thought they were going to be drowned. There was a time in our lives when Mandy and I used to sail up to the Shetland Islands quite regularly. We never quite faced any. It felt like that at times in the ferry. And also when the boat tilts, you get used to it tilting one side and the other, and then it tilts and it doesn't feel like it's going to go back, and you think, oh my word, we're going over, and then it does come back with a huge great crash. I can't imagine being thrown around in a little thing like that out on the sea. No wonder they thought they were going to drown. No wonder they thought they were going to be totally destroyed. Perhaps we can understand why they thought Jesus didn't care while he was sleeping in that back part of the boat. We will go through life's storms, even if we're being obedient to Jesus. It is understandable that at times we might cry out, God, don't you care? It is understandable, but it is wrong. Because all the time that they were going through this, Jesus was there sleeping on this part at the back, on a cushion, apparently oblivious, but with them. That detail that Jesus was sleeping on that back part on a cushion is really important for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it kind of proves that this is an eyewitness account. We believe that the Mark of Mark's Gospel is John Mark, who was a companion of Peter's in Rome. And it's believed that as Peter shared all his accounts of what Jesus did and the things that he taught, John Mark was there writing them down and produced this gospel for us. So Peter saw this event. He was there on the boat. He saw where Jesus was. But it's also important because it shows Jesus doing something wonderfully human. We've had great stress over recent years as we've gone through the teaching that Jesus is truly God. We mustn't also forget that Jesus is truly human. Why was Jesus sleeping? Well, why do any of us sleep? He was sleeping because he was tired. And the fact that he got tired and he needed to sleep kind of reminds us of the humanity of Jesus. And if Jesus is human and Jesus went through all those human things that we go through, it means that he can empathize with us when we go through difficult times. Hebrews chapter 4 says we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses. We have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are. Yes, that verse is talking about falling into sin, but it underlines the humanity of Jesus. It underlines the truth that Jesus went through the same things that we do, and he understands. Do you ever feel rejected? Well, Jesus was rejected by almost everybody, even by his family at times. Have you ever been called a liar? So has Jesus, even though he never lied once. Do you fear the future? Jesus asked God the Father to take the cup away from him as he knelt in the Garden of Gethsemane. Are you in pain? Jesus died in agony. Do you ever wonder where God is? Jesus cried out, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" He was a refugee who had his birthright questioned. The authorities ganged up on him. Sometimes when we go through vicious storms, we want somebody who will listen and understand. Jesus listens and he understands. And he is with us. Just as Jesus was in that boat with the disciples, so he is with us. Ready to listen, ready to understand, ready to empathize, whatever we go through. But there are times we want more than empathy. There are times we want somebody who can deal with the problem. When the disciples called out to him for help, verse 39 says he got up, he rebuked the wind and the waves. Quiet. Be still. Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. Jesus is fully human, but he's also fully God, with all the power over creation that God has. The one who created the galaxies and the sun, as we sang about with the children earlier. The one who made the sun and the moon and the mountains and the fjords. He is able to help us with any situation because he has all power. As the disciples faced this huge storm that they thought would destroy them completely, they had Almighty God right there with them in the boat. He never left them for a second. I have some idea of some of the things that a few of you might be going through at the moment. There's probably a lot more that I don't know about that's going on below the surface. But listen, whatever it is, Whatever pains, difficulties and problems you face right now, Jesus is right there with you. As you go through that storm, he is in the boat with you. You can take your problems to him. He understands. And he wants you to talk to him. He wants you to take your problems to him. And listen, freed now from the constraints of a human body, he no longer sleeps. You don't even have to wake him up. He's listening for you right now to go and talk to him about your problem. He understands. And he can deal with any issue that you take. One who can calm storm and still waves with a word is one who can resolve any of our problems. You've got a difficult decision to make. God can direct our thoughts. You need somebody else to make a particular decision. God can change the way that they think. You need to pass an exam. God can give you the answers as you sit there. You're hurting. God can heal the wounds and put loving arms around you as you face emotional pain. You need money to face a situation. God can provide what you need for any situation. You need direction. The Bible says God will guide our paths. He is right with you and he can deal with anything that you face. And knowing that should give us peace. When Jesus spoke, the wind died down and the sea was immediately calm. If any of you have ever lived near the sea, you know that when the storm finishes, the sea remains really rough for a long time afterwards. It's been churned up so much, but it takes a long time for it to settle back down and go flat. Not when Jesus calmed the storm, it doesn't. The sea was immediately flat. This eyewitness record of Peter, a man who knew what the sea was like, says this miracle produced a flat sea straight away. Whatever our worries, whatever our concerns, if we will allow Jesus to deal with it, if we trust Jesus to deal with the problem, instead of trying to wrestle with it ourselves all the time, he can give us that sense of peace which passes all understanding. You've possibly heard it said before that if you're not frightened, you probably don't understand the situation. But that's not true with God. Christians don't bury their head in the sand and pretend the problems aren't there. Yes, we face the problems. Yes, we realise that they're real. We face all the hurts and the pains and the problems that the rest of the world does. We can be honest about them to ourselves and to others, but we can have peace. We don't need to worry and fret and be frightened by them. Because God can give us peace in any situation. He can calm the choppiest of waters with a word. He can calm our hearts. Verse 37 says that the boat was nearly swamped. Nearly swamped, but not quite. It wasn't swamped because the disciples called on Jesus and he calmed the storm. And I know that there are times in our lives that we feel nearly swamped. We feel that we've got to the point we simply can't take another thing going wrong. One more thing and we are going to go under. We are just going to collapse. We are going to have a breakdown. We are not going to be able to cope. We might be nearly swamped, but not quite. When we cry out to Jesus in that moment, he's there with us in the storm. He can calm the storm and he can give us a sense of peace which passes all understanding. You won't be swamped because you have Jesus right alongside you, whatever you are going through. You won't be swamped because you do trust him. And your faith will grow in those moments. In verse 40, Jesus rebuked the disciples for being afraid. He rebuked them for their lack of faith. You see, faith is the antidote to fear. And we are not going to fear because we do have that faith. And I believe those disciples learned so much. Why did Jesus take them through that storm? To build their faith. To make them stronger for next time. To give them the faith that Jesus is fully human and can empathise, and he's fully God and he can deal with anything. Why does God take you through pain and storms and difficulties? To build your faith for the future. You will be stronger. You will trust God more. You won't fear because you know that Jesus is right there with you. Trust him. Turn to him, whatever you face today.